Hi everyone, this is Knowledge Topper, and in this video we will understand another very important topic from risk management, and that is risk assessment. Okay, like what is risk assessment, what is the process of risk assessment. We will understand all of this with the help of an example that I have prepared for you guys. So most importantly, your concept should be clear. Okay, but please stick to this video till the end, as I can guarantee you after watching this video your concept will be completely clear and you don't need to spend more of your time again on this topic. Okay, so please watch this video till the end. First of all, I will read the definition so you have a basic understanding about risk assessment. Then we will focus on our example to understand it properly. Okay. So as written on your screen, a risk assessment is a systematic process. Please concentrate on the highlighted words. Okay. This will help you to understand this topic very easily. Okay. So basically, a risk assessment is a systematic process of identifying and evaluating potential hazards that could negatively impact an individual, organization, or community. Okay, why I said the systematic process? Because as you can see on your screen, there is a proper process to identify risk. Then you have to evaluate the likelihood and impact of that particular risk, or you can say hazard. Then you have to determine the level of risk, and then implement risk control, different risk control measures you have to apply that. And basically the last process involve the review and update of that particular risk assessment on a regular basis to ensure that it remains relevant and effective throughout. Like basically, if we talk about the objective or the goal of a risk assessment, is basically to determine the likelihood and the impact of a potential hazard, and then basically implement different measures to minimize or control the possible risk that different organizations or different individuals or communities they are exposed to, basically. Okay, like basically if I can explain you this particular risk assessment process with the help of an example that I have prepared for you guys, so you better know what exactly the risk assessment process is. Okay, so let's take an example here. Suppose that a cafe wants to conduct a risk assessment to identify its potential hazards in the kitchen and dining area. Okay, so as you can see on your screen, there are five different steps involved in a risk assessment process. Number one is identifying hazards. Okay, and number two is evaluate the likelihood and impact of each hazard. Number three is determine the level of risk. Number four, implement risk control measures. And number five is review and update. Okay, like if we talk about our very first step, it involves identifying potential hazards that could cause harm. And if we talk about our example, the possible hazard could be burns from hot equipments, slips and falls on wet floors, food contamination. Okay, so all these are the let's say if we talk about risk manager or risk analyst, suppose that they identify these particular three hazards. Okay, like burns from hot equipment, slips and falls on wet floors, and food contamination. So these are the possible identifying hazards. Okay, then after identifying these hazards, suppose that the risk manager in the very next step evaluate the likelihood and impact of each hazard. Okay, like basically this particular step involves determining the likelihood of the hazard occurring and its potential impact, such as the number of people affected and the severity of injury or damage. Okay, so if we talk about our example, the likelihood of a burns from hot equipment is moderate and the impact could be severe. Okay, similarly if we talk about the likelihood of slips and falls on wet floors, it is high and the impact could be minor to moderate. Okay, and the last one is the food contamination. So basically the likelihood of a food contamination is low and the impact could be moderate to severe as well. Okay, so this is our second step. Then if we talk about our third step, which is determine the level of risk. Okay, basically this step involves combining the likelihood and impact of each hazard to determine the overall level of risk. Okay, like for example if we talk about a hazard with a high likelihood of occurrence and a high potential impact would have an overall high level of risk. Okay, and in our example of a cafe, like if we talk about the risk of burns from hot equipment, it is moderate overall. Okay, then if we talk about the overall level of risk of slips and falls on wet floors, it is high. And if we talk about the food contamination, it is low to moderate. Okay, so the question is where we get from these results. We basically in second step combining the likelihood and impact of each hazard, and then we determine the level of the overall level of risk. Okay, in our third step. Okay, then if we talk about our fourth step, it involves implement risk control measures, like basically selecting and implementing different appropriate measures to control or minimize these risks, all these three risks. Okay, So basically this steps involves all these sorts of things. Okay, like if we talk about from our perspective of a cafe, they implements the following measures, like as you can see on your screen. Like if we talk about burns from hot equipment, they provide different trainings on the proper use of hot equipment in order to control that particular risk. Then if we talk about the slips and falls on wet floors, what they did is they post different warning signs for wet floors. And if we talk about food contamination, they implement different food safety procedures. Okay, so that's how basically they implement different risk control measures. Okay, then if we talk about our last step, which is review and update, basically these steps involve regularly review and update the risk assessment to ensure it remains relevant and effective in controlling or minimizing risk throughout. Okay, so all these are the 5 steps involved in risk assessment process. I hope you like today's video on a risk assessment and the example is helpful to you. If you like this video, thumbs up. Do appreciate our hard work in creating this particular video for you by subscribing our channel Knowledge Topper, as well as like our Facebook page. And do join our Facebook group as well, where you find a lot of good material, not just related to these topics, but from many other different courses as well. I have already created a lot